and Julian Assange still pleading innocence.
Yes, Julian Assange not consenting to be extradited to the United States. It was a pretty brief procedural hearing at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier. During that hearing, he was asked whether he would like to consent to be extradited to America, and he was told that if he did so, that would shorten the process, that things could be wrapped up reasonably quickly, but that he would be sent to America on that basis. Julian Assange saying he did not consent to go along in that way, confirming that he will fight this extradition process, speaking briefly via video link from custody, saying, "I do not wish to surrender myself for extradition for doing what he calls journalism that has won many awards and protected many people." Another court date was set for later this month, which will again be brief and which will again be procedural. We'll start to hear a bit more in terms of the meat of the case and the American case against him and the case for Julian Assange's defence, the case against the idea of extradition when we get proceedings moving a bit more quickly in June. But this is a process that could take months and months and months, if not years.
And Ollie, the case against Julian Assange goes back almost 10 years, all to do with those diplomatic cables released around 2010 with the help of whistleblower Chelsea Manning. For the benefit of those of us just catching up to the story, remind us how we got here.
We got here because all of those years ago, of course, since those years, the Americans have been hoping that they could get Julian Assange over to the United States for questioning, if not to be charged. But of course, in the intervening period, we had a sexual assault case against Julian Assange relating to claims made in Sweden that he denied. And so in 2012, he entered the Ecuadorian embassy here in London to try and avoid those sexual assault charges. He said from the very beginning that all of this was an attempt to get him to the United States to face those leaking charges, those charges of leaking of government secrets and information. 7 years inside the Ecuadorian embassy here in the British capital, as you said earlier, arrested just a few weeks ago. He was arrested initially, having British police been allowed into the Ecuadorian embassy by the Ecuadorians. He was arrested for those charges of skipping bail, on which he was convicted and then sentenced here in London yesterday to 50 weeks in jail. But after he was arrested initially by British police, he was also re-arrested on that extradition request by the United States. So we're now at the point where that extradition process is playing out. But I was reminded today of that long-running extradition process that we saw around Shree Dewani, which took years in itself. We were back at Westminster Magistrates Court for repeated dates to hear arguments on both sides of that case. And clearly this is a similarly high-profile case that could last for a similar amount of time if Julian Assange continues to contest his extradition.
A lot has been said then, Ollie, about Julian Assange's physical well-being, his health, since he was hauled from the Ecuadorian embassy. A lot of people shocked at the state that he was in. Are we still seeing much of the same talk, or does he appear in better condition?
Certainly his supporters say that he is still suffering various ailments. He is not in particularly good shape. He does appear to have had a haircut since he left the Ecuadorian embassy, and he appeared via video link, as I said today, from custody. One of the crucial questions in all of this is going to be exactly what happens to him if and when he does get to the United States. Britain and the US do have an extradition treaty to try and make these things easier, to try and make these processes run more smoothly. But one of the key questions is going to be around the death penalty. Britain has a long-standing rule that it will not extradite anyone to a country that may use the death penalty on that person. So I think we will hear play out in court in the coming months what kind of assurances the Americans have been able to give the British that if Julian Assange does end up in America, he will not face the death penalty. But we do know that if he does get extradited to the United States, he could well face many years in jail.
Live for us in London this afternoon. Thank you.